Hello and welcome to FI for Kids, a podcast about guiding your kids on the path to financial independence and extraordinary lives. I'm your host, Dominic DeLaquil. Our guest today is Rob Tracz. Rob is the founder of Prime Performance Coaching, where he works with entrepreneurs to achieve breakthrough results both in their businesses and their personal lives. He's also the host of the Surviving the Side Hustle podcast. Today, we're going to discuss the holistic approach he uses with entrepreneurs and how parents can use those same concepts in guiding their kids towards FI and fulfilling lives. Welcome, Rob, and thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, Dominic, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So before we get into concepts like resilience, goal setting, habit building, luck creation, and that sort of stuff, let's start a little bit just with your background. What did you learn about money when you were growing up, whether that was conversations that you had with your parents and your family, or if you didn't really talk about it much, just sort of what you picked up from observation?
Yeah, I think I had a pretty unique experience around money when I was younger. When I was super young, parents were together, and I think we lived in a slightly above average kind of lifestyle. From what I can remember at a young age, we were traveling a lot, going to different places, and it didn't really seem like money was really of an issue until my parents got divorced. And my mom and my sister and myself had moved away across state lines and such. And then all of a sudden, the conversation of money and funds and really access to certain things kind of started to pop up in our conversation and as a child. And I think I came from this scarcity type of world where now all of a sudden certain things are limited or restricted because of money. And I think that really impacted me as I started growing up, as that required me to pay myself through college and both undergrad and grad school, and then even afterwards getting into entrepreneurship, having to bootstrap a lot for the beginning of the business, and then just kind of going from there. So started with not even really thinking about it, but then developing the scarcity mindset, and now been working my way through and getting more into like an abundance kind of mindset in the past 10 years or so.
Yeah, and that, in my experience and also from talking with people, that's harder than you might think, right? Those things become so ingrained, especially if you pick up a mindset like that when you're younger. It can really, and even though you're aware of it and you're trying to change it, it can be insidious, like the self-talk and the thoughts that you have and the self-limiting beliefs that you have. And so it takes, I think, quite a bit of effort and consistent effort over time to really work your way out of that, to go from something like scarcity to an abundance mindset.
Yeah. I mean, there were countless times and that I can just remember where I would look at, like, I was dating a girl who came from a very wealthy family, and like the amount of like waste and food and different things here and there. And I was always in a situation where it was like, oh, I got to make sure that I utilize everything, got to clear my plates, got to like make sure everything. And it was interesting because then remembering myself like growing up and certain snacks and things in my household and just relating with different people that I connected with over the years. And it was a unique experience kind of growing up and seeing things from multiple different perspectives.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So from there then, how did you find your way into performance coaching?
Yeah, performance coaching kind of I guess I would say an easy but not very simple transition. Undergrad, I studied kinesiology. Grad school, I studied exercise science. I got a concentration in performance enhancement. I was working with a lot of high-level athletes, some semi-pro, ex-professional, D1 bound athletes, and in that world, that's where I kind of started my entrepreneurial journey. I was in the private sector of strength and conditioning, which allowed me to taste entrepreneurship. It allowed me to kind of build my own book of clients under the umbrella of another business. And that allowed me to pick and choose different things and who I wanted to work with, when I wanted to work. And that allowed me to build up my book essentially to a point where I was working 15, 16-hour days, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
So I'm connected and communicating and working with a lot of individuals. And although that's great for my bank account, that was very poor for my personal account. So friends, family, relationships, even my own health started to deteriorate. And that wasn't until unfortunately, my father passing from stage 4 pancreatic cancer and having a rude awakening of, hey, this isn't the life I want to live, because although I'm making enough money to enjoy all the things that I want to be doing, I don't have anybody to do it with, and nor do I have the time to do any of those things either, because I'm so busy working. And that really became the catalyst for myself to take a step back and reflect on the things that I wanted to change. And then in that moment of reflection, I realized that it wasn't all about teaching squat patterns and bench press and diets. It was much more than that. And having to kind of dig a little bit deeper and deeper and deeper to really find out that it's more than that. It's helping other entrepreneurs set themselves up and establish the right habits and build the physical, mental, emotional resilience to handle different things, and connecting with other individuals on other levels, and making sure that you're established and able to do the things you want to do, so that others don't fall into the same traps that I fell into.
Yeah, you remind me of what Michael Gerber has said in the E-Myth, right? Which is, you want to be an entrepreneur, which is great. Like, I had a restaurant for a while, and one of the best things I ever did, but man, it was an absurd amount of work. And he, his thing was, yeah, you want to work for yourself, and now you find you're working for a madman. Right. Yeah. Because getting the business started, right, it's described as businesses in their infancy, and it really is like that. They take constant care and attention, and you're responsible for everything, and you got all your finances on the line, and it's a great rush, and it really is this creative endeavor, and you've got this vision, and you're bringing it into reality in the world, but then it's easy to just completely lose all sense of balance, right? And ultimately, the reason that you wanted to do your own business in the first place is, yes, you want to feed this creative spark through this idea of your business, but ultimately you want it, just like with FI, you want these things to give you more life. And so if you get stuck in this trap of you're just working all the time, even if it's your own business, that's no kind of a life in the long run, right? So that's good for you, man, that you saw that. I mean, unfortunately, kind of what brought it to your attention was your father's passing from pancreatic cancer. But sometimes, those tragic things in life then become awakening moments for other people, right? And those of us that are left. So good for you that you came to that realization, and now we're doing something to help other entrepreneurs work towards finding that right balance. So let's dive into that then. Let's get kind of into the meat of things. So, and I know you have a holistic approach that blends physical, mental, and emotional strategies, right, to foster that resilience and also clarity and performance. And so I think that's really cool. And in order to do that, you've got 6 core principles that you teach your clients. So I want to talk about each of those in the context of teaching kids and young adults goal setting and habit building so that they can develop the mindset and skills that they need to get to financial independence and have a more balanced, more meaningful, joyful life. So I'll summarize, and then I'll turn it over to you, and you can run with these however you want. So your 6 principles are resilience, intentionality, clarity, optimization, networking, and luck creation. So just why don't you take those and run whatever order you want to go with?
Yeah. So I guess to kind of run with those, I would best to kind of establish where it kind of all started. When I was in that burnout phase where I was grinding and all, like many hours, and I felt like I was just spinning, like progress wasn't moving. I was moving a lot, doing a lot of different things, but progress wasn't actually moving forward. And that's when I began looking into additional revenue streams and trying to find other ways of making more money, because I physically couldn't work any more hours in the day. So from there, I took a step back and I was thinking to myself, like, okay, well, what's helped me be successful through the course of my life? And reflected back on when I was a younger age and getting into sports, and how that became a gateway for me to make more friends and take care of my health a little bit more. And what it really boiled it down to, before I had the 6 principles, I had just 3 steps. Just look good, feel good, and do great things. And those 3 steps kind of branch into 2 principles each. So if you were to just look at the looking good, so the first phase, in order to look good, You've got to be confident. You want to feel strong. You want to have the energy and the motivation to go and do the things that you want to do. And in that one there, you have both the resilience and then the intentionality principles too. Because when you prioritize building strength or working on establishing some resilience, you want to be pushing yourself and challenging yourself different ways. So expanding your comfort zone and getting comfortable being uncomfortable so you can handle those ups and downs that life throws at you. Same thing with the intentionality, because it's more than just what you're eating when you're eating it. It's understanding why you should be eating something or consuming something. So because of my background in nutrition, it's easy for me to talk about different foods and things and how that energizes us and impacts our energy levels. Mm-hmm. But it's also super important to pay attention to the digital nutrition that we're consuming. Yeah. Are we doom scrolling on social media, or are we binging Netflix, or are we spending time to actually benefit ourselves by listening to great podcasts like this one, or listening to great books, or reading books, or watching educational courses, or taking these courses online? Because that's what really motivates us and inspires us to continue to take certain experiences and insights and adapt them to our lives. And once you have that foundation, so you're challenging yourself in different ways, and you're also consuming intentionally, that really has us looking good, in my opinion. And then we can kind of move into that next phase, which is feeling good. And for me, feeling good is really moving with clarity. So understanding where you're at, where you're trying to get to, and how to get there. And then once you have your goals and you know what your values are and your strengths and your weaknesses, and you really know yourself and you know where you're trying to get to, it's about that optimization. And now it's moving with efficiency. So how do we get to point B in the most efficient and optimized manner so that we can provide a better impact and such? And once we have that clarity and we're moving smoothly, you can say, yeah, we're feeling pretty good. And then we transition to that final one of doing great things. And as much as we all want to say that, like, as many people are trying to be lone wolves and do it all on our own, in order to really do some great things, you've got to have a great team around you. You've got to have support staff. You've got to have, it takes a village, right? Yeah. So you need to have different people. So really diving in and looking at your own social capital and how strong are your influence skills. Are you able to help people who need the help? Are you able to connect with others and provide more things? So really doing an audit on our team triangle, like who's in our team, in our tribe, and how can we help influence in a positive way and make better connections. And then the second half of that doing great thing is that luck creation, which really comes down to preparation meeting opportunity. And if you do everything else before that, and the looking good and the feeling good, you've got all that prep down. So you're showing up as your best self. And then it's just as simple as keeping your eyes open or your mind open to being available for new opportunities. And that comes in so many different shapes and sizes, and preparing yourself so that you can really seize the opportunity when it appears. So then you almost kind of look like that overnight sensation, right? There's no real such thing as an overnight success, but it's possible to appear as that when you constantly show up prepared and ready to take advantage of those opportunities.
Well, so let's see if I can, I've got several things I want to sort of toss in there. I'll just start with the luck creation idea, because I think it kind of ties back around to sort of where you started, right? Because if you, right, looking good, feeling good, and those things encompass, if I'm understanding you right, not just, oh, I want to look good and making sure that, yeah, you have a nice, I don't know, a nice shirt or whatever. It's more about you're taking care of yourself, right? It's back to this idea of balance, right? And resilience ultimately, we can talk about resilience here in a minute, but ultimately ties in with taking care of yourself. You can't be resilient if you're burnt out, right? So you've got to, again, we're back to this idea of balance. And yes, it's important to work hard. And there are times in your life where that's essential in order to move things forward, but you still always have to balance that out. And that's all about making deliberate choices, right? We get into intentionality, but the luck creation that's kind of the culmination of all these different things and putting yourself in a good position, right? You're taking care of yourself, you're confident and strong, and not worn out or burnout. So then when opportunities present themselves, you're able not only you've not only put yourself in a position both physically, mentally, financially to take advantage of them, if you're burnt out, oftentimes you don't even see them. Or, right, we can interpret things that might be opportunities from a completely different perspective and see them as a negative rather than a potential positive. And so I think that's a cool way to sort of end. And especially with your idea of, you can seem then like this overnight success when really it's all the preparation, which is all of these other important steps that are really about taking care of yourself that puts you in that position in the first place.
Exactly. Yep, yeah, exactly.
And so what's cool, right, is so with FI, and as parents are trying to guide their kids and teach them about money basics and guide them towards having better finances and achieving financial independence or financial freedom at an earlier age before traditional retirement, it's really about having more life, right? Creating more opportunities. And all of those things play in perfectly with what you're talking about, right? Because if you're not taking care of yourself and you're not healthy and you don't feel good, it doesn't matter how much money you have, then your life is somehow lacking. And so it's really about, but if you don't have money, right, and you're struggling and you're constantly anxious, you can have other good things in your life and you can still be happy, but then you're still always sort of stressed about the financial aspect, right? So the idea is to combine all of those things together to make the most of your life, right? And so for parents, it's setting their kids up starting early and then helping them through their teenage years and then even into young adulthood, having conversations with them, talking about money, but also talking about these other things to guide them in that direction. And you mentioned the idea of, just doom scrolling or binging Netflix. And it's not that you don't want to spend time with some distraction, but again, it should be deliberate and intentional, right? So you don't just get sucked into it and then you're just doing it nonstop at the expense of doing other things. Because if it's important that you feed yourself mentally, like you were talking about, right? Listening to great podcasts or doing some courses or reading good books. I mean, all those things are essential, but you also need, just like with exercise, right? You also need a break once in a while. And so it's okay to turn things off, shut down, take a break. But again, it should be intentional and balanced, I think.
Yeah, the intentionality, it's massive. So this whole thing clicked to me when I was actually driving up to Montreal with my girlfriend. We were going on a weekend trip and we were driving up and I had this idea of this intentionality and I was trying to figure out how I wanted to kind of teach it and how I wanted to bring it to life. And then it dawned on me, because I'm always talking about nutrition and dietary nutrition. And for most people who have at least an understanding of basics nutrition, the protein, that helps us build our bones, our muscles, and makes us strong, gives us that structure. The carbohydrates are kind of like the fuel that gets us to go. And then the healthy fats are kind of like the things that help us move and operate more efficiently. So then I kind of think of that as I drive a Jeep Wrangler. I love my Jeep. I've always driven Jeep. So I use that as the framework. Like the proteins that we eat builds the structure of the Jeep. So it makes it strong and sturdy. The carbohydrates are like the gasoline that helps us propel and move us forward to our goals. And then the fats that we consume are kind of like the oils that allow the Jeep to operate efficiently. And then as I'm driving there, I realized that the digital nutrition that we're consuming is so important as well, because that affects our vision. So if you look at yourself as that Jeep, your windshield is what you can see through. So as you're driving along the journey for your goals, there's going to be some dirt and some bugs that kind of splash onto your windshield. So you wipe it off with your windshield wipers and fluid. Those dirt and bugs, that's going to be some of the distractions that pop up, like the doom scrolling and social media and things like that. Yeah. And you use your wiper fluids and washer as like the educational, motivational things to clear it away and get us back on track. But just like in a thunderstorm, when the weather is so powerful, you have to put on your hazards and you have to slow down and go at a much slower pace. Same thing, if we don't take a break from the educational content and motivational stuff, if we're just all busy work, we'll slow down our progress towards our goals too, because it's a balance and you need to be intentional with what you're consuming. So it is good to have some of those down times with all of the educational courses and things like that as well.
Yeah. 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 That's cool. Those are cool analogies, man. So nice work there. That's
Thank
cool.
you.
Yeah. I really like that.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah. Today's episode is sponsored by Groove, one of the Singleton Foundation programs. Groove is a free web app that helps you master your money one habit at a time. It uses goal setting to help you build healthy financial habits and encourages you through positive reinforcement and bite-sized learning content. It actually reminds me of Noom, except it's about your understanding and relationship to money and your money choices instead of your understanding about food and nutrition and your eating choices. You can find Groove at groovemoney.org, and I'll put a link in the show notes. So thanks to Groove and the Singleton Foundation for sponsoring this episode. So let's tie this in with kind of parents and kids, right? I mean, so you're working with entrepreneurs. So these are people that are already kind of working hard and they're focused on a particular set of things. So for parents trying to teach their kids and instill in them good habits so that they're moving forward with these things, what suggestions do you have for how they might approach looking for opportunities to teach them these 6 principles?
Yeah, I think kind of like if we were looking at just the first principle there with building that resilience, that really gives us the strength and the confidence to handle a lot of things that kind of life throws at us. I think that's a great way to kind of teach people, or practicing yourself to is to I know for myself, setting myself with different budgets and different kind of constraints too. So if I'm planning to go on a vacation, or if I'm planning to do something, I have to set certain budgets for myself for spending habits so I can get to my certain goal. And tinkering with those adjustments allow you to kind of pressure gauge or stress test yourself in different situations. So if I'm somebody who's kind of spending and I'm going out to eating all the time and I'm spending so much money and I'm trying to go on vacation later, I might shorten my budget down a little bit less than where I'm feeling comfortable. So then when I do go out to eat, I can feel that stress a little bit, that little bit of discomfort, like, oh, I can't necessarily I can't go out 4 nights a week. Maybe I might need to cut this down to just ordering out like once a week so I can afford that. That's a pretty safe environment and boundaries for yourself to stress your own budget and your spending skills. Can I adjust my spending skills based off of what I'm trying to go to? And then the same thing too. So like flip it the other way, say that you've been working for a while and you suddenly get a great bonus or a big raise at your job. You don't want to just immediately adjust your lifestyle to spending more because of that. You want to flex your skills, your resilience to stay within your boundaries for your spending habits and your lifestyle.
Yeah. So then what that brings to mind for me, right, is so a couple of things. So with kids, then there's a couple of ways that I see that parents could approach that. And part of it is just as parents are working on their own budget and doing what you're talking about and trying to manage, all right, we've got this thing we want to have money for, this vacation, let's say, and plus we like going out to eat, whatever things we like spending money on, and we're always tweaking that a little bit depending on what our goals are to find the right balance. I think it's really important that people talk about money, right? There's so much societally, especially, right, unless you come from money, like, if you come from the working poor or the middle class even, it's just sort of still a thing where like, no, people don't talk about money. That's not polite. And I think that's a big mistake. I think we should talk about it. And so I think parents talking to their kids about money is super important. And so that's a thing that parents could just talk to their kids about so they understand, some of the thought processes that are going on, and that and also, right, modeling for them that, okay, it's okay to talk about money. And also this idea of a couple of things, right? That we have to make choices. And sometimes that means giving things up, right? To have other things that we want maybe down the line, which gets into something you mentioned, which is, you can feel that a little bit uncomfortable if you're eating out too much, right? Because you want to save for this vacation. And I think the idea of parents being able to teach their kids, talk with them about, because we want to be comfortable, right? We want to be happy and comfortable, and that's kind of a natural thing to gravitate to. But ultimately, again, we're back to this idea of balance. To really sort of have the comfort and meeting and fulfilling life that you want, you've got to be not just okay with being uncomfortable, but you have to embrace it. Not all the time, but at times. It's just like exercise. Or you talk a lot about nutrition, and these are things that I'm really big on too, and I see a lot of correlation between exercise and nutrition and your physical goals and your financial goals. So if you want to be healthy and strong, you've got to be uncomfortable. You've got to go exercise, and you're pushing yourself. It's uncomfortable, but you get benefits from it. And I think those same things are true with your finances. So the idea of just teaching your kids, hey, it's okay to be uncomfortable, and you've got to learn to do hard things, because life isn't always just going to be, rainbows and butterflies. It's just not. So you've got to embrace doing hard things, because ultimately that's going to make your life better. And the other thing I guess I see is that, so there's parents talking about what they're doing with their kids, but also then looking for opportunities, like if their kids have an allowance, or some people sort of pay them for doing chores around the house, whatever approach parents might take, this idea of, well, they've got money maybe in different buckets like you're talking about, and then helping them understand, well, but you spent all the money you had for spending, and now you want to get this thing. I guess you're going to have to wait, or you're going to have to find a way to make some more money. And they can use those things too from their kids' own lives to help teach them these same ideas that you're talking about.
Yeah, I think that's really important there. And you mentioned in the beginning there was that communication aspect of it. I know for myself, communication around money could have been a little bit better. It could have, like, whenever I couldn't get something, or we didn't have the money to get certain things that I wanted to, it was always just kind of like no, you can't do that. We don't have the money to kind of spend on that. So then I was thinking to myself, like, okay, well, is that kind of like me, or am I not good enough to be able to afford those kind of things? And does my parents not care about me enough to get me those kind of things? Whereas if communication was a little bit different, it could have been like, hey, look, we're saving up to go on a vacation. We really want to go to Disney World. So instead of buying these things here, let's do this, or saving some of your extra money now, so then you can get that other toy or whatever it might be down the road. So I think that is a really huge thing, and it can be difficult for us for me, it definitely was for a while, to communicating about money. And communication in general is very difficult. One of my mentors told me that miscommunication is the baseline. So you could even have the best intentions for everything you're trying to do. Like my mom could have been like, hey, we're going on vacation. Like that's her intention. We're saving money for that. But because miscommunication baseline, I could have been interpreting that as, oh, I'm not a good enough kid, or I'm not doing as well, so I don't understand why I don't get certain things like that. And it's difficult, and it's hard to work on that communication skills, especially as a parent, and you don't have somebody else to work with. And that's a way to kind of route.
Yeah, that's you. A couple of really good points come to mind. One is, it may have just been, right, if your mom was stressed for money, that she wasn't comfortable talking about it because she was feeling the stress, and maybe she felt maybe guilty, or some sort of lack of self-worth, or down on herself for not having enough money, right? And didn't want to talk about it for those reasons. But then that has the unintended consequence. And this has come up in other episodes, and, sometimes in light ways, but still, like, parents, when they're talking to their kids, or when they're talking about other things, the kids are always listening. And even though it seems like they're not, they'll pick up on things, and sometimes they get it wrong, right? They just have a weird perspective, and it's like, well, where did you get that idea from? Well, I don't know. We couldn't get that thing, and so I thought we were poor. It's like, no, we're not poor. We're just choosing not to buy that stuff because we're saving for this trip, right? For whatever. And kids, I think, even if they don't acknowledge it right in the moment, especially when they're younger, I do think that they are pretty amazing in what they're able to take in. And so it's so important to have those conversations so that they understand, right? Like in your case, hey, it's not you. You're not a bad kid, Rob. It's not about you. It's about this larger thing. And then you can understand and then kind of help appreciate. And even if you're a little bit in the moment, still going forward, you'll really start to understand that. And then that just has a better result for you in all kinds of different ways as you continue to grow.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Let's talk a little bit about networking, because networking is commonly thought of, right, in a business sense of like, well, you've got to sort of network and you're doing that to, make sure you've got opportunities out there and, just all kinds of good things come out of that. But I think for kids and even for adults, I think there's this idea of it's not networking so much. I mean, they tie together, but there's a whole idea behind who you spend time around has a huge impact on your thinking and your results and your behavior and all that sort of stuff, right? So if we just take a physical example, right? So if you play tennis, and you're trying to improve your game, you don't want to play with people all the time that are not as good as you. And you don't want to play with people even all the time that are on the same level as you. You want to, at least part of the time, play with people that are better than you, because that's how, right? And again, now you're uncomfortable and you're pushing yourself, but that's how you improve and get better. And so for kids, hang with the friends that they have, and this is true for adults, the people that you spend time around are either going to pull you down, keep you at the same level, or you lift each other up. So let's just give me your thoughts around that, because I think that's a hugely important concept that oftentimes people don't give enough deliberate or specific conscious thought to.
Yeah. What's the common saying is your network equals your net worth, and I think that's really, really true. Because you are the sum of the 5 closest people you spend most of your time with, and in terms of networking, I feel like sometimes it gets kind of like when people hear networking, they kind of think of it as like dirty, it's like salesy, kind of pushy, just looking to kind of sell people their products and things. But whenever I go to networking events, I go in genuinely looking to make connections and build relationships. I look at it as I'm looking to find somebody that I would genuinely like to invite to go get sushi with myself. Like, hey, I love eating sushi. Let me go see if I can find somebody who's cool enough, and maybe I'll learn a little bit more about them. And when I have that kind of approach to networking, communicating, and relationship building, it kind of changes the game. It puts a different lens on it. And when you are looking to kind of expand your network, because your network equals your net worth, but it's not necessarily about knowing more people. It's about having better connections and digging deeper with the connections that you do have. And I try to teach a lot of my clients to go through the team triangle is this framework that I work with a lot of my clients. It's at the top of the triangle is the smallest portion at the point. That's the space for the coach. I use a lot of like different analogies. So at the top there is the coach, and that's your mentor or your role model, somebody who has something that you kind of want, or at least think you want, that you can learn from, and you can ask them questions, whether you actually know them or you can ask them questions, or maybe they're just like a figure that you follow, or a book or an author, somebody that you can learn and gain from. The next tier down in that triangle are the captains of the team. And these are those individuals that are around your level of influence and what you currently have. So these could be people I share with other entrepreneurs. These are the individuals that you can collaborate with, the ones that you can learn from and test different things off of, and you can ping pong like ideas back and forth with. And then also the bottom there is the crowd. So these are the individuals that you hang out with and you see that cheer you on, and they motivate you and hold you accountable and push you to kind of go and continue to grow and go forward. So doing this little team triangle exercise helps you gain that insight of your inner circle, your tribe of people that you have around you. Because if you don't have a good coach, or mentor, it's hard for you to kind of frame and make moves in your life if you're not moving towards somebody who has something bigger or better than you. And without a good, solid team captains around you, it's hard, because you might be spending a lot of time in different activities or different places that's not necessarily going to help you get to that goal that you're trying to get to. And then on the flip side, if you have great captains around you who are always pulling you forward and pulling you into different doors and opportunities, then that really helps too. And then with that crowd, if you don't have a strong crowd that's cheering you on, you might find yourself distracted more times than not. And if you have a good, strong crowd that's cheering you for every opportunity and pushing you, that's going to just energize you and keep you motivated and keep you pushing, because you want to perform well and you want to do the things that you're trying to do so you can hit those goals and targets.
Yeah, and I think it's easy for all of us to get discouraged at times for a variety of different reasons, right? And it could be coming from physical things. You didn't get enough sleep, or you've been really sort of working hard to accomplish, to get a certain project done or get to a certain point or whatever. And then it can be easy to get discouraged. So having that crowd is important. And I think, that's another cool analogy. And I think for parents with their kids, they have that's an interesting dynamic in my mind, because the parents really with parents and kids, they sort of have a role to play in all three tiers. Obviously, right, the parent with their kids is going to be the mentor role, right? They know things the kids don't know, and they can see their kids' personalities, and you tailor their approach for different kids on how to best get them to sort of move forward or work on whatever personality things or maturity things that their kids are working on at a certain age or a certain level. But also they can play that captain's role at times of being kind of their sounding board and kind of work with them at their level, not necessarily trying specifically to sort of bring them up and mentor, but just sort of, and also then look for and help guide their kids or nudge them towards better friendships, where then they develop friendships with kids that become captains, and they're working at that level. And then obviously, of course, right, sometimes parents just have to play the role of the crowd and encourage their kids and keep them motivated and celebrate them and keep them from getting discouraged. So yeah, that's cool. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, then that's the whole other side of the team triangle too, is because once you identify your team triangle, then you also start to be aware of like, hey, maybe I'm in other people's triangles. Maybe I am part of the crowd for this, or I am the mentor on that one. So you hit it right on the head with that, and how the parent, it's important to identify different stages and where you can play different roles on the team.
Yeah, no, that's actually, I hadn't thought about that at all, but that's a really good point you bring up, right? It's just then trying to be aware of what role you play in other people's triangles, so then you can support them better. Which that also brings me to another point. When you're talking about the captains, one of the things with innovation and the way that innovation happens a lot of times is you've got to, and talking about networking, right, is you've got to have interactions with people that are outside of your group, right? So you're into exercise and performance coaching. You're working a lot with entrepreneurs, right? My career for a long time was as a physical therapist. And just as an example, so I was with an organization, and we were working on a project to come up with a financial metric and a financial training tool for other people in the organization. And we were trying to simplify it and figure out, and we were stuck on this idea of like this algorithm, but we wanted to keep it simple so it's not so much detail that it's like your brain shuts off. And we couldn't figure out how to do that. And so with this idea of innovation, that sometimes the light bulb moments come from people completely outside of your realm. So I have a friend who's a graphic artist, and I just asked him, hey, what do you think about this? This is what we're trying to do. And he was like, and it was stupid, because he was like, oh, well, you should just do that all online. And it's like, oh, of course. Well, we were so stuck. We were all therapists, and not that we weren't aware of those things, but we just hadn't occurred to us because we were so stuck in what we were focused on, and it just needed somebody from outside, from a clear perspective. And it's like, oh yeah, of course. And then we came up with this really cool tool that organization still uses, where you can see it basic, but then you can dive down into detail, but it's not this jumbled, cluttered mess like on trying to fit all on one page. And I think that's true with all kinds of things. So, as you've got captains, or as your kids are sort of developing friendships, and you see, oh, this is good, they've got a good interaction with each other, also, because especially with kids, I think it can be easy to just want to be in your clique, right? Until you get older, like, when you sort of get out on your own, that starts to open up. And, if kids go to college, that usually sort of opens up, and they just they get a little older, and they start to just become more open to different ideas and perspectives. But as parents, we can encourage kids, even when they're younger, to be open to different perspectives and different interactions with different kids, because, right, you never know what ideas are going to come from there that may really light your kid up and take them down some sort of a path of something that's interesting to them that then becomes meaningful for them for the rest of their life, whatever that might be, whether it's reading if you had a kid who didn't like to read, or it's music, or I don't know, it doesn't really matter what, but just this idea of networking, it's about building the connections like you're talking about. But I think there's also a component of establishing some connections and being open to people with different perspectives, because you never know what that might bring to you or what you might bring to them.
Yeah. No, that's it too. So, because I can't remember the story, but there was a situation where there was a team that was brought together, and it was all some of the best people in their industry, and it was like the top of the top, and this team together on paper should have been the best in the world at solving the problem, but they failed to find the solution because they were all coming from the same schools of thought and same backgrounds. So they lacked that perspective from elsewhere. And once they brought in somebody from a different background, all of a sudden it was like, boom, exactly like you were just saying with your team working together. And then you ask your buddy and he was like, oh, why don't you just do it online? It's
Yeah.
Perspectives.
Yeah, right. Just a different point of view. Sometimes it's like, oh yeah, light bulb. So yeah, no, that's cool. I don't know. What else is on your mind? What other thoughts do you have?
I think like continuing on with the whole like communication and like social networking and things like that. I think it's important to, aside from the perspectives like that, is it's good to just kind of get out and try different things, because then that brings us back into connecting with other people, but then pushing yourself in different comfort zones and stuff. Because I remember when I was a kid, I was trying to connect with more people, and moving around different school districts and such made it hard to make and maintain friendships. And then once I got into sports, it made it a little bit easier to connect with others and to relate. And that's something that I really wish I would have explored a little bit more, and being open to that little bit of discomfort of connecting with other people, because you don't know what you don't know, and you don't find that out unless you put yourself out there and you do connect and you have conversations and you touch base with people. So in terms of parents and kids, like that's got to be immensely important, beneficial, is putting into different things, and like art and sports and different avenues. And even if it's not you or things that you like, but like you said, your kids might like it, or they might connect with somebody and relate to another child and really expand their mind and their thoughts, and what can evolve into a lot of other things too in life.
Yeah. You just never know where this path that you might go down or your kids might go down, where that's going to come from. So yeah, so being, open to things, I think is really important. The other thing I just wanted to touch on is, we haven't talked a lot about clarity, but that ties in, I think, to something that I talk about all the time in terms of working towards towards financial independence. And I kind of alluded to this before, right? But it's not just about the money. The money is just a tool to have you have more life. But you still have to make choices along the way. And in order to do that, you've got to know what matters to you, right? What you really value, right? So, you mentioned you like to really go out and eat sushi. You don't want to give that up entirely. Now, you might decide based on other things that are going on or what your money goals are, well, I'm going to eat out for sushi less, but you're not going to give it up altogether. Right? Or if you really like to travel, then that's something that you're going to plan for, and you should spend money on those things because it matters to you. But if it's stuff that doesn't really bring you that much value, then that's where you have to pay more attention. Be like, I'm not going to spend, I don't need to get a new car. My car is fine. Like, all right, sure. It's a little older and, but it's not important to me to keep up with the neighbors and be fancy. It's important that I'm putting more money into my investments so that I can reach financial independence sooner, and my car works fine. I don't care that it maybe looks a little dumpy or whatever, right? And so to me, that gets to your point about clarity, right? And I think that's it's so important for all of us, right? For adults, for whatever goals you're pursuing, and certainly for kids and for parents to help teach their kids and help them identify and be aware of, because it'll change, right, as the kids continue to grow, to be aware and be thinking about, well, what really matters to you, and be clear on what that is, so that your whatever goals you're trying to achieve, whether it's a business you're trying to build, or it's a job you want to get, or you're a sport you want to play and you want to be at a certain level, or your finances, be clear on what really matters to you so you can make optimal choices along the way.
Yeah. So naturally, Dominic, the question is, how do you figure that out? And like that's what took me forever, because when I was in that stage of burnout and working and 15, 16-hour training sessions per day, I was just chasing a financial goal just because I was chasing a financial goal. I just thought that I just needed to make more money, and this is what I needed to do to make more money. And then when I realized, like, hey, this isn't what I really want to do, I had to kind of figure out what it is that I did want to do. And for me, I came up with, like, I'm a big acronym guy, and I came up with the Pirates flag. So flag being the acronym, for me, the first letter F is foundational values. So for me, I heard a lot about values and different businesses and things like that, but I didn't have a set of values for myself. Like, yeah, I'm trustworthy, honest, I'm driven, I do this, I do that. But like, those are all just ideas. And then I was like, I need to really hone in on my actual values, what really drives and motivates me. And then once I did, that really became like the internal compass to kind of figure things out. And then the next letter in that acronym of flag is L, which is lifestyle traits. So then this is where, when I'm working with somebody, it's like, okay, well, what things do you actually enjoy? What makes you unique? So I hinted at how I'm a big Jeep guy. I love my Jeep. I'm a big sushi guy, so I love sushi. I love Jimmy Buffett, so all these different things, and kind of putting all that together really starts to put some color to the framework of who you are, so your flag. And then knowing that helps, because then, like you said, you can decide on certain things that you want to be spending money on or making decisions for versus things that maybe you don't need to do at this moment. And then A being aspirations. So what are the goals? Where do I actually want to go to? Because when I was just trying to hit money, it's like, okay, well, why? What do I want to do with that money?
Right.
And trying to figure that out, digging a little bit deeper onto those, so you can paint that picture and get there. And then the last letter is G, which is growth opportunities. So doing like a little SWOT analysis. What are my strengths? I've always been in a leadership role in sports. Communication's always been relatively a strong suit, leading by example. Those are all my strengths. But for my business, some of my weaknesses is like technology. So as we were sharing just before we started recording, I got a new microphone. So I was like, great, this is going to be good. I have a team of assistants that help me with my show, because they can help make sure the social media content is ready. They help prepare everything, get everything uploaded and ready to roll, because that's not my strong suit and I can't do that. And I would have just spending hours and hours trying to figure it out myself if I didn't know my strengths and my weaknesses. So just having that idea of understanding your pirate flag, knows your values, which direct you on an inner level, your lifestyle, which helps you choose and pick and choose and paint the picture a little bit clearer, your aspirations and your goals, where you're trying to get to, and then your growth opportunities, knowing your strengths and your weaknesses. And then that really, like, whether you're trying to save up for a certain goal or not, like, that'll help you dictate a lot of different actions and goals and tasks you need to do to get there. And I think that can even be a fun exercise to do with your kids too.
Yeah. Well, because I think a lot of that is just when you're younger, like you were saying, it took you a while to figure it out. I think that's true for most all of us, right? But you've got to, you have to work at it consistently over time. Same as with exercise, right? Or with your finances, is this idea of self-reflection and trying to know and understand yourself better takes effort and takes work. And sometimes it's uncomfortable, but sometimes it's fun, right? And you start to figure things out. You're like, oh, that's right. Okay. This is okay. Now, because it helps you then identify, okay, this is the lifestyle that I sort of see myself having. I see a definite, Jeep, sushi, Jimmy Buffett, right? There's a theme there, right? But that's good. That's you knowing yourself. And so then that helps you make decisions about how you want to spend your time, how you want to spend your money. And you're right. I think parents having those conversations with their kids and starting that early, because then when they get into young adulthood and then they're really trying to start to figure this stuff out, then they've already been primed to think about those things, and they know, oh, I can go talk to my parents about that stuff. So I think that's really cool. So why pirate? Why a pirate flag?
Long story short, I like the Pirates of the Caribbean. So I was like going through a period where I was watching those movies a lot, and I was like, oh man, what a life, the pirate's life. That's awesome. So
there's definitely a theme with you. That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, that's cool, man. That's cool. Okay, so where can people find you if they wanna reach out?
Yeah, the easiest place to find me or to reach out and talk to me is social media. Instagram and LinkedIn is where I hang out the most, and always open for questions. And at the very least, if you hear the episode, let me know how we did. Like, let me know if you've resonated with any of the information, because I love the feedback, and I'm always constantly getting better, because one of my personal values is progress towards mastery. So making sure that I continue to be the best version of myself.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think the through line with most of the stuff that I teach and talk about really comes down to awareness. So if you take anything from whatever I'm talking about, it should be to pay attention to what works for you. I think it's really easy to kind of get a lot of information from your coaches and your mentors and just from a lot of people out in the world. And that's good. That's a good starting place. But I think there's a time that needs to take place where things need to become you and yours, and putting your own unique spin on it. And it's hard to do that unless you know what actually works for you. So in terms of financial, it's like, yeah, some people tell you to live super, super tight, save. But if that's not lined up with your goals and that doesn't work for you, that might not be the best bet. So I think really pay attention to what works for you.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. And that's Bruce Lee, right? Like, he studied all these different martial arts, and the idea was you take what's useful and discard the rest, which is about you, what makes sense and what works for you. And I think that's totally true with FI, right? Because it's a little bit different puzzle for everybody as they're working towards FI. And you're right. Some people they really get off on the austerity thing, and they want to see, great, how much can I really sort of just trim things down and get there as quick as possible? And other people, like, that's not the right path for me. And that's okay. There's no one right path to anything for any of us. So I think that's great final advice, Rob, which is, take all this information from different places, super important, but then you've got to eventually make that your own. Well, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it, man. It's a good show.
Like, thank you so much. This was awesome.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the FI for Kids podcast. Please support the show by hitting subscribe and receive new episodes every Thursday. The intro and exit music this episode are courtesy of Douglas Cameron. As always, you can find links to the FI for Kids music in the show notes. Thanks again, and we'll talk next week.
You're about the horizon. I can't reach you, you're so far away. And if I run to the place I want you to stay, you'd be gone. I'd been left wondering why you moved on, and why you never said goodbye. I can't wait any longer. I see the writing on the wall. It's time for us to say, tomorrow we are yesterday. Tomorrow we are yesterday. You're like the sunset. You're glowing bright, but you're fading. And what I don't get is why I'm left here waiting. But I'm like a phoenix. I will rise up from this I can't